All right, let's talk about something super frustrating. Your dryer, full of wet clothes, is just sitting there, flashing a weird code at you, and it absolutely refuses to start. If that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to demystify and fix one of the most common electronic glitches out there, the F6 error code. Let's dive in. Yep, there it is, that blinking F6. Or sometimes you'll see it as an E6, just staring you down. And it's so annoying, right? It's not giving you a simple clue like check the vent. But here's the good news. That code isn't random. It's actually a very specific clue. And together, we are going to follow that clue right to the source of the problem. So, here's our game plan for solving this thing. First, we'll figure out what the code actually means. Then, we'll look at why it's happening, this whole handshake failure idea. We'll identify the usual suspects, and then I'll walk you through a step-by-step investigation, from the easiest stuff to the trickier bits. By the end, you'll know what's wrong and what to do about it. Okay, first up, Section 1, the F6 code mystery. So what is your dryer actually trying to tell you with this cryptic little message? It all boils down to this: user interface communication fault. Now, in normal English, that just means two of the most important electronic parts in your dryer have stopped talking to each other. It's like they're giving each other the silent treatment. So this isn't a broken belt or a clogged vent. It's a communication problem. So that brings us to Section 2, a handshake failure. To really get what's going on, you've got to understand that your dryer basically has two brains, and right now, they're not on speaking terms. Here are the two parts. First, you've got the control center. That's the user interface, or UI board. It's the part you actually touch, all the buttons, the screen, the dials. It takes your commands. Then you have the brain. This is the motor control module, or MCM. This is the big boss inside that actually tells the motor to spin and the heater to turn on. So an F6 code is what we call a handshake failure. The control center sends out its hand to say, hey, let's start drying, but the brain never feels the handshake. It gets no signal or a garbled one. And when the brain gets confusing information, it does the safe thing. It just shuts everything down. Our job is to figure out why that handshake isn't connecting. And that leaves us straight into our investigation. Section 3, identifying the suspects. So let's line up the usual culprits that cause this kind of communication breakdown. Now, pay close attention to this, because this tells us where to look first. The number one suspect, by a long shot, is a failed user interface board, the control center. It's the most common cause. Way less often, it's the main brain, the MCM. And sometimes, and this is a really important one, it's not the boards at all, but just the wire that connects them. This is key because it tells us to start our search with that UI board. All right, time to roll up our sleeves. Section 4 is our step-by-step investigation. We're going to do this the smart way, starting with the simple, free stuff first, and then moving on. But hold on. Before you touch a single screw, this is absolutely the most important rule. Safety first. Unplug the dryer completely from the wall. I'm not kidding. Don't just turn it off. Pull the plug. We are dealing with electricity, so let's be smart about it. Okay, step 1 is the easiest, the hard reset. You know, the old turn it off and on again. Since your dryer is already unplugged, just leave it that way for about 5 minutes. While it's unplugged, go ahead and press and hold the start button for 30 seconds. This helps drain any lingering electricity from the circuits. Then, plug it back in and cross your fingers. Sometimes that's all it takes to fix a temporary glitch. If the reset didn't do the trick, it's time for a physical inspection. First, just use your eyes. See any signs of a liquid spill or moisture around the control panel? That's a big clue. Next, you'll need to pop the top or front panel off to get inside. Look for that bundle of wires connecting the two boards. That's the communication harness. Now here's the critical part. Carefully unplug that harness from both ends. Look closely at the little metal pins. Are any bent, or do you see any green, crusty corrosion? Then, plug them back in, and I mean really plug them in. Make sure you hear and feel a solid click. A simple disconnection causes this problem all the time. Okay, let's say you've checked the connection and you're still getting that F6 code. Well, if you want to be 100% certain what the problem is, without special tools, there's a great DIY method called the swap test. Now, there's a big catch. This only works if you have access to another identical, working dryer. So here's how it works. With both machines completely unplugged, you carefully swap their user interface boards. You put the known good board into your broken dryer. Then, plug your dryer back in. If the F6 code vanishes, bam, you found the villain. It was your original UI board all along. But If the F6 code is still there, well, that tells you the UI board is fine and the problem is deeper. It's either the MCM or that wiring harness. Now let's move on to our final diagnosis. We're going to take all the clues we've gathered and use the dryer's specific behavior to really nail down the cause. So which of these symptoms matches your dryer? Does the F6 code pop up the instant you plug it in? That almost always means a totally dead UI board or a broken wire. Or is the problem intermittent? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That points to a failing UI board or a short in the wiring. Or maybe all the lights come on, but you get the F6 code only when you press start. That's a classic sign of a UI board that's only partially fried. Find your symptom on the list. Now, before you even think about buying any parts, we need to talk about the golden rule. If you remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. Firmly reconnect that communication harness at both ends. I'm telling you, you would be absolutely shocked how many F6 errors are fixed by this one simple, totally free action. Do it first. All right, we've reached the final step. You've done your detective work, you have a solid diagnosis. Now it's time to make the call. Do you repair it or replace it? If your diagnosis is a bad UI board, the replacement is usually pretty straightforward. It's often a simple plug-and-play part. Replacing the main brain, the MCM though, that's a more complicated job. You should only even consider that if you've completely ruled out the UI board and the harness. And of course, there's the cost. Since the UI board is the most common problem, you should expect the part to cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 to $300, maybe even more. Knowing that number is going to help you decide if it's worth fixing your current machine or just putting that money towards a new one. So what's your immediate next step? It's simple. Unplug that dryer, get inside, and check, double-check, and then triple-check that main communication harness. Make sure that connection is clean, undamaged, and seated as firmly as humanly possible. And that really leaves us with one final thought. After all this diagnostic work, all this talk of electronics and communication failures, could the solution to your problem really be as simple as just plugging a cable in all the way? Well, there's only one way to find out.